hosts, the Bay Area Brawler, Skylar Greenberg, and your Colonial Champion, Sean McCoy. Welcome to the Court-Martail Podcast!
And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, one and all, to a very special edition, a quick shot, a reload, if you will, of the Court-Martail Podcast. I am your Colonial Champion, Sean McCarty, here today. Basically, I got a little bit of inspiration from BlampCo and Adam Blampied, everyone's resident top 10 wrestling aficionado and controversial member of the wrestling community. We'll just leave it at that. I happen to like his work, although his wrestling opinions and mine do tend to differ as far as what he likes and what I like. And I'm not knocking his opinion. Has every right to have his opinion, as do I. And just recently, he just released a top 10 impossible dream matches, and he listed off a whole chunk of them, and, well, 10, because, it was the top 10, and I thought, wouldn't it be fun if I listed off some top 10 dream matches of mine throughout the years, but I'm going to frame it a little differently. So what I've done here is I have created a dream Summerslam, 2 nights of Summerslam, not in Minnesota necessarily. I'm going to have the location kind of changed to accommodate the match so that it would work given the people that I've chosen. But I'm going to break down the 10 dream matches that I have compiled, that I have put into 2 days, 5 matches apiece, and I've made 2 cards of my dream matches. So I've made 2 dream cards for me if we had a weekend of a day 1 5-match card and a day 2 5-match card. And the stipulations or the rules that I set for myself is I had to choose one person who is either no longer wrestling or no longer with us or retired or whatever, somebody from the past of wrestling with somebody in the current throngs of wrestling. So you will see that it has to be somebody who is either still wrestling or still is in the capacity for wrestling, as you'll see from my tag match, what I'm talking about, because they're not retired, but they're just taking a break. It's like Patrick, you're not leaving, you're just taking a break. So that's kind of what we're talking about here. You'll see what I mean when we get started, but let's start with day 1, match 1, Summerslam, Dream Summerslam Saturday. The first match that we have, old versus new, it is Bret the Hitman Hart versus Drew McIntyre. Now, I know that you would probably have expected me to make Bret face somebody like Kurt Angle or somebody like Bryan Danielson, because that's always like the pairing, is master technician versus master technician. And my argument is that while those matches would be terrific, there's no doubt about that, I think Bret always succeeded better when having somebody a little bit bigger than he was. And Drew might be the best big man worker that Bret could possibly work against, save for one, but he's going to be in a matchup later on. But Drew took a lot of influence from Bret as far as the way that he does his suplexes. Drew is a hell of a striker too, so I think that they could really achieve a level of grittiness that Bret always tried to incorporate with his matches. I think there would be a lot of fun with Bret trying to get on the sharpshooter and Drew's thighs being too big, or just going into a Claymore that Bret's able to duck or sidestep right into a sharpshooter. I think there would be a lot more dynamic back and forth with the two of them. I think, Bret as the babyface, Drew McIntyre as the heel, and ultimately the winner of that is that Bret makes Drew tap. But it's a hell of a confrontation one way or the other. I mean, seeing Drew, Glasgow kiss Bret right as Bret got a face buster or something. I'm just saying, or an atomic drop of that regard. But that's match 1, day 1. We're kicking off the show with Bret Hart versus Drew McIntyre, who would definitely get the crowd at. And in this one, I think it could be pretty much in any WWE venue. That one is not building or territory specific, but definitely a WWE setting for Bret versus Drew, although I bet they could probably get some legs out of that in Stampede if they chose. But that's number 1. Day 1, match 2, I have here as Triple H versus LA Knight. Now, I know what you're thinking. I actually don't know what you're thinking. You're thinking, why the hell would you put Triple H in a dream match? Now, hear me out. The key to this is you need to have JR on commentary. And not old AEW, the soul has been ripped out of my body, JR. Racial accusations, JR. But I'm talking prime Reign of Terror, Golden Shovel, 2002 to 2004, JR. Just calling Triple H the most demonic things possible. And Triple H at that time was such a good heel at getting the top guy as far as the sensation goes. And if you put that in 2023 megastar LA Knight versus absolute bastard Triple H of 2002 to 2004 for the World Heavyweight Championship, you've got money. LA Knight wouldn't win the world title, but you've got money. I think that would be one of the ways to get LA Knight's spark back after all of the booking burial that he's had, but I think it would do him some tremendous good against, and Triple H would be the guy to get it out of him, and JR would be the guy to sell it on the microphone. And as for the result of that, I'm going to say that Triple H probably beats LA Knight with influence from either Evolution or the Sledgehammer or a ref bump or something. That keeps, obviously, because yes, this is fantasy booking, but there has to be some level of reality. So I'm going to say Triple H pins LA Knight with some shenanigans involved in what they would want to be a very long match, but I would probably cut it relatively short because then again, with only 5 matches on the card, sure, have 15 to 20. So then everybody goes to the bathroom and we get to match number 3, Day 1, Match 3. Day 1, Match 3 is going to be a personal rivalry, a personal matchup. It could not get more personal than this. Dusty Rhodes versus Cody Rhodes. Now, this will require the impossible. Cody's gonna have to turn heel. I'm sorry, Cody, but there's no other person. If you're not gonna do it for anybody else, do it for your daddy. Because here's the way I have this pictured. Dusty has recognized that Cody Rhodes has taken his name. He's taken his marketing. He's taken his father's legacy and remarketed it and rebranded it just to become a Flair. He's achieved all of these things that he was supposed to accomplish, and Dusty saw this from the beginning with Cody. That's why he tried to dissuade him from coming into the business, because he knew that Cody would be toxic, baby. And Cody, of course, is mad because what kind of father was Dusty Rhodes to Cody Rhodes? What kind of man was Dusty to Cody when Dusty had all of these other NXT children and yet his own child couldn't get that love? It's easy. It's an easy story. Cody turns into the American Nightmare. He dyes his hair black for the matchup. And in that one, I think that probably Cody's going to have to do the job for Dusty, baby. And or we get a Dusty finish for a Dusty match where it seems like Dusty's won, but it actually turns out that Cody does. But that match has to happen. I think that's a story that writes itself because Dusty's not going to turn heel. And there's no reason for Dusty to turn heel because the crowd wouldn't allow it. No matter when it would be, the crowd would not allow Dusty to be heel in that program, especially now. People are so they hate Cody. They hate how Cody has turned into nothing but Surfer Sting. I will give the Blumpian video credit there, and the link for that is in the description if you want to check that out, because one of the matches that he chose involved Surfer Sting, and Cody Rhodes really has kind of become Surfer Sting, but it's lasted much longer, and the fans have gotten much more burnt out by it. And so that personal matchup I think would come into play. So we'll put a pin in the other match. We'll get back to that. Day 1, Match 4. It's the only women's match on the 10 matches that we've chosen, but it's a doozy. And I had a hard time choosing who I wanted for this one, because there's a lot of older ladies against some modern women that would be really fun to watch. But this is probably the one match where the styles seem to be relatively similar, but because of their physiques and their size, I think they could have a really dynamic kind of match. Luna Vachon versus Rhea Ripley. Now, I don't think Luna ever really got a chance to show how good she really was in the ring, and that was kind of talked about somewhat in her Dark Side of the Ring episode. But to think about how her and Sensational Sherry were kind of the archetype for what a woman like Rhea Ripley is in WWE nowadays. And Rhea's just taken it to a whole different level now. I mean, and it's just a shame that the booking has kind of knocked her back down the scale, and now people... I hate to say that the bloom is coming off the rose for Rhea, which sucks, But that really is how it feels right now, and I hope that that changes, and that Rhea can get some sort of matchups when she gets healthy to give her career another shot back in the arm. But, you know, with Bianca's finger not looking good and also her having a child, that match doesn't look like it's happening anytime soon. So, I might as well dream book this match with Luna Vachon, because this match for the women's title, Rhea Ripley would ultimately win. I'm not sure that there would be a heel in this situation, but if there had to be one, I'm guessing that people would boo Luna because they would just, by nature of just how she is, you know, that then Rhea's got, you know, kind of a following of marks like me behind her, you know, where Luna didn't really have the kind of backing. So with Luna being a heel and Rhea being a babyface, I think Rhea coming out on top of that one is probably the best case scenario there. Probably just a definitive win with the Riptide, and you know, that being that, but a good match nonetheless. And then we get our main event of day one. And this matchup is not for a title, but it is a personal feud. I would just the match would be great for the storytelling they'd be able to do. I'm not sure about the match quality as far as wrist locks and holds, but the promos leading up to this would be bar none, to where it would not even matter what the match looked like, because that's how much people would want to go to see it. And this is the only overlap that I've got between myself and BlampCo here, because the match is just too good not to have. Stone Cold Steve Austin versus CM Punk. They teased it way back in the day. You know, Kevin Owens and Austin had a great match for what that was going to be. You know, and Owens was the great guy to do it, and he was the perfect guy to do it, but man, what we missed in promos with Punk obviously as the heel and Austin as the babyface, and Punk goes to hit a go to sleep, and maybe does, and instead of going for the pin, you know, I think he would have to hit the go to sleep, or try to hit the go to sleep and it just be countered, spin the leg or spin the knee, that Punk around, turn around, stunner, 1, 2, 3. Steve Austin finishes with the Steve Weisers. They've also have the, you know, the beer versus no beer, you know, the kind of straight edge versus alcohol, but I don't even think you need to do that, because you've got plenty of other material to work with, and those guys are so damn good. You know, how do you even stop? Yeah, how do you even? So that's that. And so that's day one. So to recap what day one looks like: Bret Hart versus Drew McIntyre, Triple H versus LA Knight, Dusty Rhodes versus Cody Rhodes, Luna Vachon versus Rhea Ripley, which would probably be a cool down match, understandably. That's kind of why I put it there. And then Austin versus Punk to close it out, with Stone Cold Steve Austin closing out the night with Steve Weisers. And that's day one. Then we move on to day two. And day two is going to, and probably Bret versus Drew would be like the Intercontinental Championship match, if there was going to be one. So day two, match one would be for the tag titles. That's the only tag match I've got on these 2 days of our Dream Summerslam matchup. And this one, oh man, I would have loved to have seen it if it was possible. And it kind of seems like low-hanging fruit, you know, when it comes to obvious comparisons. And I would have chose the Rock and Roll, but I'm pretty sure that the Rock and Roll already had the match. Midnight Express versus FTR. There's only one real tag team left in wrestling, and it's FTR, and they've been kind of blah at that. And that's really been a major result of the booking in AEW, and that's just the reality of it. But let's say that FTR in their prime got to face, I would imagine Bobby and Dennis would be incredibly fun, and I love Dennis Condrey, but I actually more have Bobby and Stan in mind for this one. And I think that the later version of the Midnight would gel better with FTR. Not that Dennis Condrey wouldn't, but I think that for what FTR brought to the table, I think that they would need somebody who was a little bit more dynamic in the aerial level, you know, kind of more of a high flyer of a dynamism, rather than the grounded Midnight Express of your, and as far as who would be heel and babyface, I think FTR would have to be heels. And I think Midnight Express, even though their money was always in being heels, I don't think they would be in this particular instance. I think FTR has burned a lot of goodwill, but I think because their heat is just so good, and because people have nowadays come to really love and respect the entire Midnight Express, especially with the longevity of Jim Cornette and the podcast, I think that the Midnight would be baby faces in that situation, and I think that's fine. And ultimately, I think that Jim Cornette, while he tries to help, maybe takes a bump, and some level of heel work here, but FTR would try to sneak it. Cornette knows the trick, hit him with the tennis racket, and Midnight Express finishes it off 1-2-3. And they have maybe one of the best tag matches on earth ever, and single-handedly revitalizes tag team wrestling to be able to draw again. And that's how you really know this is dream booking, is if I hope that a tag team division actually stabilizes and draws money, and that's how you know that it is just a dream. But we move on from the Midnight Express and FTR to match 2 of day 2. Now this one, I picked this one specifically, both of these two, because I'm imagining that Midnight Express and FTR, that's going to have to happen probably in Atlanta or Texas, or somewhere down south where they're really, I mean, not that FTR and Midnight wouldn't work up here, but when you talk about where the drawing money was for the Midnight, that's mostly down south. So it would have to be in a Texas or a Louisiana, and actually to have Bill Watts booking a Midnight Express versus FTR, but I'm thinking more Crockett fits the mold for that, and having Gordon Soley on commentary, but maybe Gordon and Bob Caudle, or just Bob Caudle and Roddy Piper on commentary, because I actually didn't put Roddy on this card. Not that he wouldn't be a good person to be on this card, but he just didn't fit this group. But here's match 2. This would have to be in Louisiana, I think, for what I'm trying to get across, but this is accomplishing 2 things. It would hopefully give the babyface his confidence back, and because he's such a damn good babyface for the Louisiana territory in the 80s, in the window that I've got him, this would also be great at cementing the heel as one of the most dastardly heels in wrestling history. If only Tony didn't ruin all these people. Because there's some good wrestlers who are good heels and good baby faces that just get ruined by that booking. But the matchup I have in mind, Junkyard Dog versus MJF in the Superdome. MJF being an absolute bastard to JYD for all of the obvious reasons, and there's a number of them that MJF could target, but the people loved Junkyard Dog in the 80s, and you put that in the Superdome in 1981 and 1982, and you have got yourself buckets of money. And amazingly, that's just the second match on the card. And in that one, I think MJF has to pin Junkyard Dog. I know that might start a riot in the middle of the show, but I think that's the way it's got to go. I mean, it's not that I wouldn't love to give JYD the spot here. And yeah, actually, I take it back. I am going to take it back. I'm going to say Junkyard Dog beats MJF, because MJF goes for the heat seeker, and JYD hits a headbutt and maybe a big thump, and gets a win, and gets one on MJF. I think that probably works, assuming that MJF would ultimately get his heat back maybe on the next week of television. As that would naturally have to be a program, is JYD versus MJF. But those two, I think if they could get the chemistry right, and MJF had fast enough feet to be able to evade the mobs, that's money. Day 2, match 3. I already spoiled this one, but now let's talk about it. This is in Memphis, baby. It's Lawler versus Gunther. As Jerry Lawler, as the preeminent babyface at this time. Now, I'm saying babyface Lawler. I know Lawler was an incredible heel, but for Memphis, he was adored beyond adored. And because he's still considered a legend in those parts, who is the perfect modern wrestler to draw money with Jerry Lawler in a blood feud? I can think of no one better than the foreign heel Gunther. I mean, for what he's doing already, I'm actually incredibly excited to see Gunther and Aldis at SummerSlam. As much as the build to this has been the most AI paint by number, fly by the seat of the pants garbage that we've seen from WWE and TKO, the matches themselves I'm looking forward to, and that one specifically, I'm so ready to see all this back in a ring. But moreover, Gunther is the perfect guy to bring all this back. And I think that he's the perfect guy to have a match with Lawler. With prime Jerry Lawler, the storytelling that they could do would be bar none. And in that one, I think Gunther's going to have to beat Lawler with some level of shenanigans. Or maybe not. Maybe he just overpowers Jerry. But I think that one there's going to have to go to... That one's got to go to Gunther. And again, presumably, we're making a program out of a lot of this stuff because all of these are matches that are worth having legs, to continue on. There's actually almost too many main events in this, It's too much going on for too many people. But then we get day 2, match 4, and this I expect to be maybe the best technical match of the entire weekend. Even better than Brett versus Drew. And this would be probably for the United States Championship, maybe a best of 3 falls. I know that the day 1 match 4 was a cool down match. This would be no such match. Eddie Guerrero versus Chad Gable. I mean, we saw what Chad was able to do with Ludwig Kaiser. He's been wrestling luchadors left and right. He and Penta, I'm really looking forward to seeing that too. Gable's on this redemption arc after having, this fight or this gripe and with luchadors at first, as he was El Grande Americano, first a heel, and then he earned the respect, of the people. And I would probably still have Chad be heel because he's just so damn good at it against Eddie Guerrero, as Eddie would be obviously unanimously cheered, but I would have Eddie probably win this one against Chad. And it'd be tremendous, but there'd be a little lying, there'd be a little cheating, there'd be a little stealing, and then naturally the frog splash finishes it off, and Eddie Guerrero celebrates in the lowrider with everybody, and that would be... And that would be probably the show stealer of the whole weekend. People would be talking about that match more than any of the other ones listed because of how technically sound it was. But we have now gotten to our main event of day 2. And this one is all about the money, baby. It's all about the money. It's an easy one. And now there were a number of names that I mulled over to put into this. Because you've got, and naturally... Hogan is somebody you'd probably expect to be in this spot. I didn't put him here. I'm sure that some people would expect Brock Lesnar to be in this spot, and I'm sure that you could interchange Brock Lesnar with the second half of this matchup if you really wanted to, because that would also be great. But I think in terms of storytelling, I think in terms of one man's, overcoming the odds or having a clear-cut definitive win, or the longevity of being the guy for so long, I think there's a better story long-term you can tell that will draw buckets of money. Our main event dream match of day 2 for the world title of choice. Bruno Sammartino versus Roman Reigns with Paul Heyman in his corner. I mean, that's it. That's it. The longest reigning champion in Bruno versus what the modern day Sammartino, the tribal chief. Ethnic babyface hero who sold out the Garden more than anybody else versus Roman Reigns, who single-handedly carried WWE through the most uncharted waters that WWE has ever seen into record business for all involved. With the Bloodline angle, that was the hottest wrestling angle since the Attitude Era. And and in that situation, I think that with some help from Paul Heyman, that Roman Reigns beats Bruno and ends up winning, and the pyro goes off and celebrating as champion. And if you want to be cheeky, then you can do the Hulk Hogan WrestleMania 9 come in, and then you get Hogan and Reigns, and then Hogan leg drops Roman Reigns and wins the title, brother, because this is, but for the sake of this matchup, I'm not putting Hogan in. Bruno and Roman, is the match going to be a classic? No. Will they throw punches and lay shit into each other? Absolutely. Will Roman Reigns be wearing red undies? You better believe it. as Roman Reigns will beat Bruno Sammartino, thus cementing him as the upcoming greatest of all time. You know, and as far as, you know, because there's always those comparisons with like Hogan versus Cena. And in some ways, those two are very similar. I think there's more similarities to Roman and Bruno in terms of kind of the longevity of being the guy, albeit in different ways, than there is with Cena or with Hogan for Bruno and either of those guys. You know, if you're looking at like the big five of who's the guy, which is Austin, Bruno, Hogan, John Cena, Roman Reigns. And I would even take Austin out of that because Austin was the guy, without a doubt, for many years, you know, for 6 years, but he wasn't like the long-term guy the way that Bruno was, or the long-term guy the way that Hogan was, or the long-term guy the way that Cena was, or the way that Roman Reigns has been, you know, for a long time. So it's really like the big four of the guy of WWE. And I think the most interesting match of any of those four is Bruno Sammartino versus Roman Reigns. But it's got to be more modern Roman Reigns, not the suffering, succotash, dog food, big dog Roman Reigns. It's got to be Tribal Chief Roman Reigns. And that's going to be the money drawer. Roman Reigns pins Bruno, the pyro goes off, and SummerSlam comes to an end. And that is my dream matches, my 10 dream matches. So to recap day 2, then we'll go through the whole list. Day 2, match 1, Midnight Express versus FTR, Junkyard Dog versus MJF, Jerry the King Lawler versus Gunther, Eddie Guerrero versus Chad Gable, and Bruno Sammartino versus Roman Reigns. So that the full list of 10, Bret Hart versus Drew McIntyre, Triple H versus LA Knight, Dusty Rhodes versus Cody Rhodes, Luna Vachon versus Rhea Ripley, Stone Cold Steve Austin versus CM Punk, The Midnight Express versus FTR, Junkyard Dog versus MJF, Jerry Lawler versus Gunther, Eddie Guerrero versus Chad Gable, and Bruno Sammartino versus Roman Reigns. And what a SummerSlam that would be, and there'd be so many directions you could take the television after that, after those shows. So there's my list of 10. It took half an hour to explain it all. Thank you for the inspiration, Adam Blompied, and maybe we'll do a couple of these, little small encampments, where we're just pitching camp overnight and just doing a little spit roast, talking about some wrestling. Little short bursts instead of the long slog hour and a half that we're typically used to. But stay tuned, folks. We got more coming down the pike. We are going to actually watch and review SummerSlam, so stay tuned for all of that. I am your Colonial Champion, Sean McCarty. Thank you all for listening, and we will be right back right after this.